Let's call this regularly scheduled meeting of the South Lake Tahoe Public Utility District's Board of Directors to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so do we have any comments from the audience? If there's no. Okay, so when we come to number 3, corrections to the agenda or consent calendar, staff has been working on the Diamond Valley Ranch facilities emergency repairs following the Tamarack fire and the severe rain event. This emergency item came to the board's attention after the agenda was posted, and the work cannot wait. So it is imperative to add item 6B, Diamond Valley Ranch Facilities Emergency Repairs, to the agenda, and this requires a 4-5 vote of approval from the board. Do I have a motion to do so?
Motion to approve the amendment to the agenda.
Second. First reading black.
Gotcha.
So,
So do you have help?
Yes.
5.
6B.
We can do a makeup order if you want. Oh, there's power courses.
Oh, look at that.
It's a miracle. Okay, there we go.
Okay. You have unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote on that? So, I will move adoption of the consent calendar and the agenda as corrected.
Second.
I think we did the agenda already, so
So that's, so just the,
yeah,
we don't have to do both?
shouldn't have to do the second.
Okay,
Yeah, I think just consent calendar.
okay. So move.
You get twice.
Yeah. Yeah, we know now. It's gonna happen.
Okay, you have a unanimous vote.
All right, I will move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $3,131,186.63.
I'll second that.
And
Okay, have a unanimous vote on that.
that takes us to 6B, John.
Okay, thank you. 6B. As the board is aware, we have a fire in Alpine County. We burned about 650 acres of district property on or about July 16, 17, and 18. The board has a map showing the extent of the fire damage on district property. This was included in your board package and emailed yesterday. Then, just this past Friday and Saturday, a rain event caused erosion and a flood of soil and fire debris, which impacted over a mile, about 6,000 feet of the diamond ditch, with debris entering the ditch and rendering it unusable. As a result, we have shut down recycled water flows from Harvey Place until Diamond Ditch can be cleared and repaired. Normally, we're flowing about 8.5 million gallons per day from the ditch this time of year to our downstream users. We're working with 2 local contractors, in White Rock, to help with the immediate emergency repair items. They're both familiar with the area and have the needed equipment and staff to complete the emergency work. The district does not have the equipment or staff to complete this work, and they are working on other fire-related and operational activities. We have provided the board with emails and pictures of the fire damage and also of the areas damaged by the rain event and flood debris. We have additional information on the write-up for you here today and on the associated resolution that's attached. And at this point, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Jim and Trevor for more information and give you kind of the latest activity out there at DVR. And then to Paul and Lynn to discuss budget and cost recovery activities. So Jim, will you give us the latest out there?
Trevor will cover, like the engineering stuff and what he's been working on, but I can tell you where we are to date. So since Friday evening, well, since Saturday morning, actually, when I discovered this, I got in contact with Trevor and John, and Trevor came down, and, you know, we immediately called, Robert Hain and George with, White Rock, and really assessed the situation. And, again, since then, Trevor's been working on the engineering. I've been kind of coordinating things. Real positive situation. I made Tom McClintock, sorry, his office aware of the situation. I don't know if any of you know, last week he gave a pretty impassioned floor speech related to the decision of the Forest Service with this fire. And I thought, you know, nobody really knows the ramifications that our organization is going through now of late with this thunderstorm event. And so I got a contact. I emailed Congressman McClintock's office. Within 40 minutes, I got a response. They really appreciated being, you know, getting up to speed with what we're dealing with, and offered their help with FEMA or anything related in the federal nexus. And so that was a positive. And today I was able to get in contact with BLM staff, and Shane, you can help me here with this BEAR team, this, what's the acronym again?
So the Burn Area Emergency Response Team
Yeah.
is typically deployed after a fire event, where they try to do like a rapid assessment of the impacts created as a result of a fire.
And so they got the big team together, and Trevor and I have seats at that table, and we have an independent meeting with BLM slated for Tuesday to just go over how BLM's property interfaces with our infrastructure, and then the, you know, ramifications related to erosion out there. So, you know, we're in a good spot right now, and we also have to be at Deadpool with the reservoir by October 15th. That's what our waste discharge report states. We're in good shape there. I don't want to be overly confident, but comparatively to like where we were in 2017, you know, we have several weeks, you know, probably, you know, 3 weeks or better before if we had to wait that long to fire up the Diamond Ditch, we would still be able to get to Deadpool. You know, barring, you know, another event in the interim, another thunderstorm or another event that carries debris into the ditch.
Do you think we can be down for 3 weeks and stay on our discharge schedule?
Yeah.
October, okay.
Which I think will be plenty of time to clear this debris and get things back up and running. Any other questions, or do you want me to turn it over to Trevor?
Maybe bring Trevor up, and I talk to Trevor, and then Paul and Wen, and then we maybe open it up for discussion at that time.
Tie into what Trevor Phillips, senior engineer, tie into what Jim discussed. The meeting with BLM is going to be very telling in terms of the ongoing issues that we may or may not have with this facility. The majority of the debris is from well upslope, higher up in the watershed of this ditch. It's very challenging because the ditch almost perfectly contours the hillside for about 1.25 miles. So any rain and mud debris coming down comes into this ditch. You normally get rainwater in it in the winter, but it's generally a vegetated slope above it. There's a cyclone fence that's been working really hard to pull back material. But I went out on Tuesday, surveyed the entire ditch for long material. There's about 600 cubic yards in the ditch. And then we're trying to minimize how much work we're doing beyond the ditch, because really we just want to get this thing back online. They're being very selective, picking about 12 areas where little drainage is dump material. There's about another 300 to 400 cubic yards behind the fence that will move. And that's really just going back about 3 feet in, say, around a dozen 50 to 100 foot sections, just so it doesn't get overwhelmed the next time we have rain events, because we are concerned about the ongoing issues. But to address the issue, Jim mentioned that we had 2 contractors respond immediately when we weren't sure what we were dealing with on Saturday morning. And in order to remain eligible for possible FEMA reimbursement through OES, we need to come up with unit pricing. So based on this volume metric estimate, we're going to request bids or pricing from the contractors to make sure you're competitive rather than proceeding on a time and materials basis, which might not be reimbursable under FEMA if that money did become available. So Gwen's been in contact with OES. We're trying to push that. Obviously, Jim's pushing in the Flintock's office to try to see if there's any eligibility there. For the time being, we are trying to do the bare minimum to get this facility back online to get down to that dead area level. So any questions on the engineering side, or John, is there anything else you want me to touch
I think that's good for now.
on? Okay.
I have a question on that. So we're contemplating doing this district is just limited to the canal itself, but as far as stabilizing the slope and the drainage, is somebody else got the ball there or what?
Yes, that was this bear that Jim brought up that we're meeting with this coming week. And we'll, based on the expense or services that they'll provide, or either reimburse or do directly themselves, that'll bear on that moving forward. So that is a major concern. It looks like a bigger project than we want to take on, so we're going to try to keep that with them.
Thank you.
Another thing that's going on with engineering group, we previously did an evaluation of the diamond ditch. It's a unreinforced concrete lined canal. It's about a 4-foot bottom, 1.5 up the sides. It's just a trapped soil channel. These unreinforced panels, almost like a sidewalk, have been walking over time, heaving and cracking. Our crews generally do an annual sealing of the cracks. It's been in place for, what, 30 years, Jim? 30 plus years. And so it's getting to the point where we've had some pretty significant issues with it leaking out to the point of jeopardizing the hillside that it rests on. And so we did an evaluation report. We had planning, we looked at lining the canal, we looked at replacing it with another shotcrete canal, we looked at piping it. So we're going to have them out. They're also a rockfall and debris flow expert. So we're hoping to get them out for a quick site visit this coming week to get another opinion of what is happening up higher up in the watershed of the canal. So, but yeah, it's a big concern. It's pretty overwhelming when you're walking along this ditch and looking up and you can't see the top of this. I followed one channel up and it was incised up to my waist. I mean, there's a lot of material coming down off these hillsides.
So until the restoration effort is completed, do we know what rain volumes would replicate this event in the future?
We, unfortunately, our rain gauge was down at the time of this event, but I'm guessing that was 3/4 to an inch of rain.
Yeah, probably. It was probably about a 45-minute event, half hour. 45 minutes. And it was very localized, like where our weather state had the rain gauging that's working. You know, Trevor and I looked at evidence around the property, and there was minimal evidence that it was even, on the western portion of our property.
There's heavy drilling in the area, or little emergency drilling in the area around the ditch, whereas elsewhere on the ranch, there's nothing. As you drove over, there was no puddling next to the roads in some area, and in other areas, there's just pretty flow.
I mean, I guess just kind of guesstimating, is that a once a year event, twice a year event? I mean,
No, the thunderstorm event wasn't uncommon. There was flash flood advisory, so that happened several times a summer. This was the first thunderstorm that had a flash flood advisory this season, but there's 1 or 2 typically during the summer.
Okay, thanks, Trevor. So we're anticipating as much as $200,000 in emergency repairs. Paul, can you speak to this in terms of the total budget?
Sure. So, yeah, as John said, the emergency declaration is requesting authority to spend up to $300,000 to address the immediate needs that Jim and Trevor discussed. And that work will be funded directly just through sewer fund reserves, which are adequate to absorb spending at that level. We have been in contact with OES, and we do intend to apply for federal disaster funding through OES, and we feel pretty strongly that we'll be successful with that application process. If we're not, and we do have to address much larger projects like you just talked about, Nick, at that point, we may have to assess the sewer CIP to see if we have to adjust some things around to be able to fund that.
Lynn, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think we'll cover it. We are walking through the process. At this point, it is not really the federal, it's only the state, so. On top of it, on top of it.
Okay, with that, open it up for discussion. Any follow-up questions for staff?
Question on the OES funding, do they typically come back? What percentage do they reimburse? Typically.
Lynn might have a better answer to this.
So it's, usually 75%. Can't hear me. I'll come up.
Thank you, I apologize.
It's, no, that's fine. It's usually 75% from the state, the feds. The state kicks in about 20%, and then we have a local cost share of about 5% of the total. No, it's really well done funding.
And then the timeline typically?
You mean to get the reimbursement or to be approved?
To get the reimbursement, actually.
Usually they let you know right up front whether your project qualifies, and then it's just a matter of kind of arguing over the actual projects and how much they cost and what they're willing to move forward.
And Linda, the application process and timing is different for the immediate emergency money versus the mitigation money, which would be like the slope control, right?
Correct. So right now we're going for disaster funds, which will come out and pay for anything we have to do to get our operations back online. Then there's mitigation funds for the larger projects, the slope stabilization, the erosion control, if it's a large project. In this case, we've been talking about piping those ditches. Mitigation for the district is going to be really probably a good source of funds because Alpine County, where we actually have our facilities, is going to be the only county of record for those funds, and they always get funded first before they move on. We've received funds for other disasters in other counties, but they always fund the projects in those counties first. So looking pretty bright for those funds, I would say.
Plus or minus, I'm looking for a duration for reimbursement for the emergency.
For the emergency, you're looking at 6 months. It's about a 6-month process.
And mitigation,
Oh, that's even longer. That's probably a good year.
we've got to fund the money for.
We do definitely have to fund the money, and then they reimburse us.
Thank you.
Any other funding questions? Thanks, guys.
I would just say, I just want to thank Jim. He gave me a tour yesterday morning, so I can confirm that in fact the ditch has a lot of sediment and debris accumulating in it, as well as there's a kind of a revetment kind of fencing that's just above that, and it did capture a lot of the debris that was coming down. I think, if you look at the map that they provided, you can see that the majority of the watershed that flows into this ditch is on BLM land, and so we definitely want to continue to work with them and find solutions to stabilizing all of the, especially those drainages that are coming right into the ditch itself. And I like the idea that we're looking at longer-term solutions in terms of how to convey the water beyond this, because it seems like it's kind of a vulnerable situation. It's an open ditch, and it's essentially, basically there's denuded slopes in and around above it, and it's just kind of a weird design, frankly. Anyway, so I just want to say thank you to Jim.
I want to add too, I was very pleasantly surprised with BLM's response. I can't say that in the past, in my dealings with them, that they've been so quick to respond. Normally, I don't get much of a response, and they were really quick to respond. I'm anxious to meet with that individual team separate from the larger team, Shane, and to see what they're going to offer. They expressed concern.
Yeah, and I guess just an observation from the tour, there's a lot of downed trees as a result of Liberty Utilities getting the power back up and available to the community of Markletville. And, there's a lot of material that could be used to help stabilize the slope that's on site. It's something to consider as you move towards starting to stabilize slopes and stuff, use those trees, help maybe establish them across the slope, and, keep them that kind of thing, so.
Shane, also thanks for your, the car maps you kept sending us. Appreciate that, and actually it's very helpful. And, for your expertise and interest in getting this work done. Are you ready for a requested board action? Sure. Requested board action is to authorize the district to, number one, determine an emergency that exists as defined in section 1102 of the Public Contract Code. Should you do this all at once, Gary?
Yes.
2, determine substantial evidence has been presented to authorize an exception be made pursuant to section 22050 of the Public Contract Code, that this emergency will not permit a delay resulting from a competitive solicitation for bids in compliance with the district's purchasing requirements, and that this action is necessary to respond to the emergency. 3, adopt resolution number 3193-21, delegating authority to the general manager to order any action necessary to respond to this emergency. 4, determine this project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Public Resources Code section 210808B2, and 4, and item 5, authorize filing a notice of exemption, and 6, approve expenditures necessary to start emergency repairs of up to $300,000.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And that passes unanimously.
See, John, before we leave this item, I think the board should take a moment to thank the firefighting efforts that saved the facility. Maybe you could describe that and tell us who did it.
Yeah, we, and maybe, I probably push this on the general, general fund, we do that. You're boots on the ground and stuff.
We were real lucky. One of our employees, Buck McClellan, lives down there. He's a pump station operator. A lot of experience with Eastern Alpine Fire and Rescue. He was an assistant chief at one time. He immediately, came back into the department to help out. Terry Hughes is the chief, assigned Buck to a patrol unit so that Buck could report back concerns that he saw in and around all of Markleyville where the fire was. So he was intimately familiar with, our operation, number one. But then he, constant communication with the fire department. Jason Blaze and I happened to be Saturday morning on the property finishing up our hanging operations, and we got a call from Buck telling us that Woodford's is being evacuated to get off the property. And, we immediately left, and later that evening, Buck was on patrol and came into our facility, witnessed fire, encroaching into the shop area. Got out of the radio for a 20-man strike team to help out, but in the interim, was out there fighting fire by himself to help save our facility. Pretty heroic work on his part. That 20 20-man strike team arrived. They were able to get a majority of a fire line around the shop, but fire was encroaching into, where they were, and they had to leave at one point and just wetted down vegetation and cross their fingers. And Sunday morning, the next day, everything's decimated around it, but the shop was safe, which saved us millions.
And they're doing some of that while basically 300-foot flames were approaching them, so.
Yeah. Meanwhile, his family's back, and he, evacuating from his own home in Woodford's, and, pretty impressive work.
Yeah, we're planning some recognition for that as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, the great payers of the district owe them a great deal of gratitude, so that's great.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Just one follow-up item on this. You'll see this agendized at every meeting going forward, as long as the emergency continues. So there will be an update at every board meeting. There will be a need for the board to determine to continue the emergency or terminate it.
Okay, that brings us to number 7, standing and ad hoc committee and liaison. Anybody have any?
Yeah. We had a solar ad hoc committee meeting Monday this week. Really productive meeting. It was probably the most well attended. It was some SCPP board members, staff, also a lot of folks from both ProStar and CORE. And so, really productive meeting as far as the financials look really good. A lot of questions that people have raised throughout this process have really been tied in, things like this in here. So, no, really just productive meeting. I don't know if I'll go into the nuts and bolts of it, anything you want to add.
No, I think it's, we're definitely moving closer to bringing the item to the board in terms of the project, and I think, and we're starting to, I think have all the concerns that have been brought forward. I think they're going to be addressed. So.
Yeah, it looks like we'll be ready at the next board meeting, the 19th.
No, that's it.
I don't have any report.
Let's see what are we reporting on. Is this, you doing both, or just?
Well, you can jump right in
Okay.
if you want to do board member and.
No, just again, thanks to Jim Hilton and then Buck as well. John and I went out to the Tamarack fire site, actually when the fire was still happening. Buck escorted us in, gave us a pretty comprehensive tour of the area, including Markville. Yeah, great job. And thanks to Buck for doing his work out there.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing good. Okay. Do any board members have a report? Mr. Board Member report?
I just have one thing. I'd like to introduce my wife, Leanne, in the back there.
I was wondering. Yeah.
She's not here anybody.
I was keeping an eye on her. Okay. Well, phew, what a relief. All right, so that takes us to El Dorado Water Agency Purveyor report.
We have a meeting next Wednesday.
You still in those virtual? You got me.
The next one's here.
That's good.
And will they be coming?
We're actually hosting it.
Actually, I talked to Ken on that, and we're going to hold that virtually from there.
We're going to do it virtually from here?
From there. So they're going to do it up as a normal meeting, and we'll look for another opportunity to do some of our project updates.
You don't want to drive all the way out here.
That's part of it.
They're scheduled for September. They just postponed it.
Oh, they did?
It's going to
Okay.
go to September. It'll be up here.
That's it. There's some logistics issues on that side as well. We need to make sure.
Yeah, I understand, and actually, it's very efficient to have those meetings be virtual.
Yeah.
I love that they all stay that way, so you don't have to drive down to Glasgow. What? The lawn.
Okay, I mean, those are the reasons that they were able to participate, just that commute time was challenging.
Well, and I think, from experience, oftentimes you spent more time in the car than you did at the meetings.
The meetings are very brief,
Mhm.
and, so, I like it this way.
Yeah.
We're trying to continue doing, having a virtual option.
That's great.
Okay, staff and attorney reports, Mr. Bledsoe.
Good afternoon. I'm here to give you an update on the delinquent accounts of turnover tax roll that we approved at the last meeting. The last meeting I reported that we sent out 902 delinquent notices for a total of close to $1.1 million to 902 customers. Today, we're at 452 accounts that total around $696,000, and that went to tax roll today. So, just a rough breakdown on that real quick. Of the 452 accounts, 72 accounts were sewer-only accounts. It was made up of commercial, multifamily, and single-family class codes, and that total was around 115,000. The rest of them was water and sewer accounts, which basically commercial made up 2% of that, multifamily dwelling made up 9%, and single-family dwelling was the biggest, 89% of that total that went to tax roll. So, like I said, that was sent out today, and then since the last time we met, the state has come up with some funding for some COVID water relief program. We have some COVID customers that were delinquent on their accounts during a certain time frame. And I believe Paul was going to talk a little bit about that.
No, you. No, I can't.
So I have one.
Yeah, as part of Senate Bill 148, the state has set aside nearly $1 billion to pay off delinquent water accounts. And we've determined through our own data that we have approximately $185,000 that will qualify for that funding. The application process hasn't opened up yet. It's going to actually flow through the state water board, but they're expecting that to open up in the first or second week of August, so it should be very soon. And the state has said they want all of those funds sent out to the water purveyors no later than November 1st, so there should be a very fast turnaround time. And so if we are successful, we'll take that $185,000 and just apply it to those individuals' accounts, and it'll sit there as a credit until the next water service charges are applied.
So does that end up going to the tax rolls, and then in November you get your money back, but it's already been submitted to the county?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
We'll submit it, if we get the funding, then we'll submit it to the customer's account as a credit.
Like they'll still owe it on their tax bill?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, they'll still need to pay the delinquent amount through their tax bill. Because we didn't want to withhold turning that over in case we weren't successful in getting the funding.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Is Evo here?
Evo's not here. I just have a quick update on the well item.
Okay.
We're continuing to work with Zim, which is our sole bidder. We had some quite a bit of discussion last time about that. So we continue to work with Zim to reduce costs of that work, and we have more work to do, but we're making progress. And I expect we'll bring this back for board action in the next board meeting.
All right. Jeff? Plant emergency retention base.
Hello, I'm here to tell you about almost some stinky water that I think you heard about before this. At the last board meeting, when I heard somebody came and was complaining about odors at the ERB. And so I wanted to give you an update on that and some background. On Friday, July 9th, at about 8 p.m., we began exporting water for a number of hours up to the ERB primary effluent treated water. So it's basically half treated. It has not been through secondary treatment, and so, but it was necessary that go up there because we couldn't get the water further downstream in the plant. So on Monday morning, Shelley put together a press release, which was like the first time I got my name in the paper, and it was for this.
But, and she did a targeted outreach to some of our customers, 141 customers, that we had contact information from WaterSmart that lived around the area up there around Black Bart and Chincopen. And so that was really cool. And they were both very apologetic and, were trying to explain the situation, taking ownership of it and apologizing like multiple times. And then I'm sorry that you guys had to deal with that. And John, I heard, did a good job when the customer came in here. And so I'm still apologizing for it, but some of the background of it. And so periods of several days, 3 or 4 days, 3 days, we sent this primary effluent up there. And all in all, there was about 1.5 million gallons of that stuff up there, and it covered about 2/3 of the bottom of one of the basins. So that's the amount we're talking about, but it was obviously really smelly and kind of a rare occurrence. So now my note says to briefly talk about the treatment processes and what happened, and I'll try to be brief on that. But after primary treatment, about 50% of the solids in the wastewater that come in are still in the water, and they're suspended solids. So then, in our industry, we run the water down through a secondary treatment process, which is always biological treatment, and so that uses the microorganisms, and they ingest that material and use it in their bodies and expend energy and grow more solids, and then turn that suspended solid into a settleable solid. So that's all that happens really. I mean, it's really complicated and very challenging because you're dealing with living organisms and they take time to adapt to your changes and things. But basically that's just the process, is to turn them into a settleable solid. So after the aeration process, they go to the secondary clarifiers for the settling. Those are big desedimentation tanks, and they settle out and then they get returned up and the clean water goes down the stream. Well, coincidentally, at the same time, and since the end of May, we've been down to 2 of 3 secondary clarifiers in the plant, because one of them is under construction for a rehab project. And so we only have 2/3 of our settling volume. And on top of that, it was right after the 4th of July holiday flows and the organic loading that came into the plant. And so you have all this bug growth as a result of that. And you have to waste some of those solids back upstream. And back upstream, we were having a problem. We didn't realize that we were having a problem in the dewatering process. And so some of those solids that were being dewatered were coming back on us also in the secondary system. So the secondary system had all this load and challenge to remove. And we were down 1/3 of our settling volume. So, and it's microbiology, so it takes time to cure. And so the only thing we could do is reroute water during this time when the settling was not adequate and it was overflowing the secondary clarifier weirs. We can't put that water through the filters because it floods them immediately. So we had to reroute water upstream. So that's how the primary got up there. Now on Monday night, an operator came up with an idea where we could connect piping. We could do an afternoon's worth of piping work in the plant and basically put in piping to bypass the filters. So then what we could do is bring water. The water wasn't good enough to export at that time, but you could run that water up to the ERV instead of primary effluent, and you can superchlorinate it. So the next day, heavy maintenance spent an afternoon and put in this piping modification, and we were able to do that during the periods of the next 3 or 4 days, a number of hours each day when it was bulking is what the term is. And we couldn't really export the water, so we sent it up there. At this time, it's secondary effluent, not primary effluent, and it was fully chlorinated. I mean, it was super chlorinated. We really dosed it up, so we dosed that basin that had that primary effluent in it with chlorine. And basically, that was the end of the odor issue. The chlorine, oxidized the material in the water, and so the odors were pretty much done at that point. Then the secondary system started healing, and it was just a matter of getting those basins empty and cleaning them as they came down to minimize the odors. But it's kind of a perfect storm where we had big loading. We had loading because of a mechanical failure, a holiday. 1/3 of our volume was out of commission, and it was like early July, 90-degree weather outside. Everybody had their windows open, and so it wasn't like February when, people might not have even noticed it. And the thing is, on the ERBs, they're there for this purpose. In the early years of my career, we used to put primary up there often. And we used to call them the political ponds, actually, because when you did that, we had customers, neighbors in the area would complain and stuff. And it was a big challenge. Since then, we've put in several different piping modifications in the plant to be able to put more highly treated water up there. And we do that on a semi-regular basis. We did it in the storms of, if we have too much influent loading on the plant, that's what we do. We have to put water up there because we can't treat and process all of that. But we also do it for construction project support fairly, frequently. I mean, percentage-wise, it's like only 2% of the year that there's anything at all ever in those basins, but it's usually fully treated water. And the neighbors around there never even know when it's happening. They don't, because it doesn't smell, and it's actually what they're there for. But in this particular case, it was, we had to take it upstream. And so the good thing is, besides kudos to all the crews, the operators, it was an incredibly stressful event. Everybody was, it was full effort all the time to manage this bulking process. In heavy maintenance, we had an operator come and spot the mechanical problem. Another operator came up with a great idea that heavy maintenance built the next day. And then heavy maintenance and ops, including myself and the chief plant operator and supervisor of heavy maintenance, we're up there fire hosing this material down, trying to get it out of there with chlorinated water, So it's very stressful, but we also came out with this piping modification that in the future we'll be able to put secondary effluent up there doing the filter bypass and not have to do this as often. The thing about this that scared me since the beginning, for years now, is in this clarifier rehab project, we have to commit to only running 2 clarifiers for 4 months. And so, you have to guarantee we're going to get good treatment during those times. And it's like, it's not a perfect science, it's biology. And it's hugely different from water treatment, which is kind of physics and chemistry. That when you bring in the bugs and the microorganisms, it just changes everything. So it's very stressful. And as we go along, we have to do this 2 more summers. Now, if we have problems and bad luck next year when we're doing the next one, we'll have this other piping modification, so we'll be in better shape. But anyway, that's kind of my report and some background. Sorry you guys had to deal with that, and we'll do whatever we can to avoid it in the future.
Any questions?
I'll just say thank you, Jeff. I'm sure you guys were working, or doing whatever you could do to make it work. Try to reduce whatever impacts to the neighborhood. Yeah, and we learned lessons. Yeah. So hopefully we'll be better off next year.
I'd like to really recognize that there's something about this district that there's a culture of, the team figuring out problems and fixing them. And in a lot of places, a lot of agencies, it's more people compartmentalize their job and they don't look outside their little boundary. And with this district, what I see in these reports is people really kind of working together to digest an entire problem and fix that entire problem. It makes our job very easy. I certainly acknowledge that these things happen, and circumstances, fires, this type of a loading event when you're working on your equipment, that's going to happen. And so nothing runs perfectly, and so we'll probably make complaints from time to time. But what is really gratifying for me, at least as a director, is that I can feel like you guys are going to solve these problems. That this isn't going to be a chronic thing. That we're going to get a parade of angry people meeting after meeting. You guys get the job done. It's really pretty nice. John, thank you. You're the chief of this, and you've implemented a culture here that's very healthy and very gratifying as a director.
I appreciate that, and I've got to go out to all of our managers and all of our team, because they're all part of that culture, of course, that really we want to build from the ground up. And I think there's also a culture of excellence, and, this is, Jeff with this incident, I mean, they take it personally, so it all, appreciate those comments, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Stanley, Altabo Well.
Good afternoon.
Al Tabo Well, we had quite an extensive conversation last board meeting about it, what the problems we were having. So just a quick update. If you remember, I was talking about the fan that was in the building itself and taking air out. It was about 24 inch and it wasn't working properly. Bad bearings. So what we thought, we got the loader motor, we put it in, and it was overheating too, just like the previous, our motor. So, like I said before, we held off on sending our motor in to have it rebuilt or looked at the $210,000 plus, because this motor is doing the same thing. So what we've done is, like I said before, we ordered a 30-inch fan, but that was 4 to 6, 8 weeks out. So here last week, Jeremy went in and found some bearings, and we had one of the crew members make a shaft for the old fan to temporarily get it up and running the way it's supposed to be, which it is now. So what we did is yesterday we pulled the loader motor out, took it back down to Carson Pumps. They need it for next week since we're going to put our motor back in. And we had to have the shaft rebuilt that goes from the motor down into the well there, or down into the gearing. And they're putting that together as we speak. So hopefully this afternoon that will be up and running. The other 24-inch fan is working better than it was. We have portable fans in there. So we think it's a heating problem inside the building. The 90-degree weather that we've had for so many days in a row. We're hoping that's the issue before we just start throwing money at everything. So I mentioned last time I wanted to have a screen door built on the back of the building that doesn't face any houses. The nearest houses or little apartments or whatever you call them there is quite a ways away past another lot. So we put that screen door in to hopefully help with the air circulation in there. So we're going to hopefully get it installed today, and I'd like to run it for a day or two and just see how it's going to act. And then we still have Bayview, so we're still good to go at this point. So just a quick update on what's going on. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
So just to clarify, you think by this afternoon, tomorrow, everything will be ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they were installing, they had some stuff to do until about noon, and then they were going to throw 2 or 3 guys over there and get that shaft put in, and then have the electricians wire the motor and let's try to get it fired up. So hopefully this afternoon, if not first thing in the morning.
Thanks, Fred.
It's not on the agenda, but we wanted to give you Adrian and I. Come on up, Adrian. You all know about the flushing that we're doing out of the Sierra track with the no-des truck. So we just wanted to give you kind of a short update on what's going on out there if you'd like. Great. This guy's the expert on it. He's worked with him before at the other places he worked, so jump in anytime you want. All right. The first slide there, this is the company. This is the sign that they have on their trailer, so a lot of people see that right off when they look at the trailer, which I thought was pretty good. The next picture there, it's basically a fifth wheel trailer, as you can see. On the left side of the screen are some reels with hoses on them, and they have, you ever seen like a meat truck driving around town that has a forklift in the back? Basically same concept, a little bit different machine. But they take those hose reels off, and that's where they can go out to a fire hydrant that's 1,000 feet away or more, and roll that out. When they're done, they use that machine to roll it back up. The hose that comes from the left of the screen up to the right, behind Andrew there, is the inlet. So the end of that is hooked to a fire hydrant that's opened up. It brings the water in. Those 2 big vessels you see there, there's 12 filters in each one. And the water goes up through those, filtered out, and then...
So it goes through a booster pump that's right behind those filter vessels that you can't see. That's got a VFD on it, and you can clock in what flow rate you're looking for. We're trying to achieve a 5 feet velocity, piping per second velocity to try and clean out what's inside those pipes. Once it goes through the booster pump, then it's going through one of the filter vessels. They're in parallel. So once one of those filter vessels gets loaded, which is about a 20 psi differential, they'll switch over to the other vessel so that they can change out the filters in vessel number one.
I told you he was the expert.
We want you to have the best information you have.
And then after it goes through the filter vessels, it goes back into the system. On board here, they're measuring turbidity going into the system and then out of it. We basically run it until we get under 1 NTU and then run it for 15 minutes because there's some slugs that get stuck in the loops of pipe that we want to make sure we're getting out. So we started flushing on Thursday, so we've been going for about a week now, and we are removing quite a bit from the system. We think the system was pretty dirty, and it's taking a little bit longer than we anticipated, which is part of the reason we're here today. We want to make sure that we keep them here until we finish the Sierra track, so we'll likely be coming to you for a little bit of money to extend their stay. Let's see, maybe what other pictures we have here. So this is the instrumentation they have on board. Kind of in the bottom middle, there's a flow meter there. So the right side turbidity meter is the inlet. The one on the left is the outlet. This little screen here shows what the levels are. And the top is the inlet and the bottom is the outlet. So the top there, 1.064. This is when they were almost finished with one of the flushing loops. The pressure gauges on the top there are telling us the inlet and outlet pressure going through the filters. There's another pressure gauge here that shows the suction pressure. That's our system pressure coming into the booster pump there. We've also had the lab out. They've been taking samples as we're going and making sure chlorine residuals are good. And they're also taking back T tests once we're done flushing a loop just to ensure that all the water is safe. And I believe everything has come back A-OK?
Everything is A-OK.
Awesome.
In fact, we had a little error communicating with them, and we ended up sampling a line that was actually producing clean, which was not what we had intended to do, and I would not have been surprised if because what was reading, we would have found a lot of bacteria, but there wasn't. Even that was clean. It would have been activated.
What were the turbidities you're measuring?
Well, we aim for anything less than 1. The state law is it has to be less than 4, but here 1 is our number. When the line was being cleaned, they were size 5. Now, people did not have their system, their water cut off, so they could have been using that. I know they were asked not to. But that had turbidity. I'm not really surprised to find some bacteria that they were, in a closed system for a long time.
And I'm receiving half a dozen to a dozen phone calls per day. And so far, knock on wood, nothing major with people. I had one call today that for some reason, I don't know if it's just where his house is or what, but he's always had dirty water problem on this one house. His neighbors will be fine, but his house always gets it. But he's out there flushing and really nice guy and really commended us on what we're trying to do with the line there. But so far, we haven't had any major problems.
And I mean, one of the things of this operation is typically flushing is going into a storm drain, you're wasting water, or it's going into the sewer, which in our case, then we're going to treat it and send it up over Luther Pass. Here, we're really not wasting water. We're taking water from the system, putting it through these filters, and then right back in. And just to give you an idea of how much water we've saved, this week of flushing that we've done, we've used 500,000 gallons of water.
No breaches of the system, no leaks,
No, sir.
We have had some issues with getting the velocities that we're looking for. We think that's due to tuberculation inside the pipes, where really our inside diameter might be a little bit less than mostly 4-inch diameter pipes that we have there, which is affecting flows. And when we turn on the booster pump, it's raising pressure in the system. We tried not to raise the pressure too much because we don't want to pop a bunch of leaks.
There's usually about a 30-pound difference. 85 is our pressure. We go up 25, 35 pounds more to push it back into the system. So we're 105, 110 PSI, so we're out there with our fingers crossed, and so far it's working.
Try not to go above 110.
Yes.
So this picture here is the top of the filter vessel. These are the bags that are there. They start out very clean. We have an example of a used filter bag that we took out this morning. If anybody would like to take a look and see what we've been cleaning out of the system.
Oh, yeah.
Open it up, Reese.
Remember, you wanted to see that.
Now, remember there is a chlorine residual in the system, so water is.
It's mostly, yeah, it's just a little gravel and sand, which is common with any well, especially after 50 years. The chlorine, takes care of all the bacteria, obviously, so it's not as bad as it looks, but as far as fire flow and increasing.
There's the gravel, and here it's kind of like the finer stuff that's being taken out, which is the biofilm.
Then this morning, we called over.
Wow. And with all this sand and gravel, we are thinking that maybe some of that was from the flow getting into the system.
This is bad. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know, we can see. That's what we normally see.
We did see some rust in some of the packs earlier. We are thinking that because we're not getting the velocities up to the 5 feet per second, we might not be breaking off as much rust as we're
How much pipe was that out of?
What was that, 600 feet that they were doing the stuff? Yeah, so this run that we did where we got these bags out was just a run of about 500 or so feet.
Oh, that's one block.
Just between two fire hydrants.
Oh, okay.
How many numbers do they have to do on that one run? There's 12 of those, right?
So on that run, they just did one filter change. And we started using those filters yesterday. So it wasn't all from the from the one run there.
So those filters, plus or minus 500 linear feet.
Yeah. And we've used about 100 filters so far in this one. Well, we were going to show you a map of what we flushed so far. We pretty much, we're flushing between Sierra Boulevard and O'Malley. And we started down at Barbara, and we've been working our way up towards Highway 50. And we think at the end of this week, we'll be pretty much done with that side, and we'll be moving to the other side of Sierra Track next week.
Given our original estimates on when they would be finishing all Sierra Track this week?
Yes, but we did get a late start. So we anticipated 10 days of flushing. What we're thinking it's going to take 15 days of flushing for 10 days. But we are using a little bit less filters than I believe we had budgeted for.
I would kind of like to feel you out. I know you can't make a decision, but the money that we had allotted, we anticipated the whole system, the whole Sierra Track being done. Obviously, we don't know until you get out there and start flushing, just like anything else in the field. It's going slower than we thought, What we were thinking is, it looks to me like we're only going to get about half the Sierra Track done. From Sierra Boulevard, state line side of the Sierra Track down. Looks like about what we're going to get finished. We haven't done anything on the Y side of Sierra Boulevard, that whole neighborhood. So, just kind of wanted to know a little bit about how you felt as far as, we would like to keep these guys going probably, I'm estimating another 75,000. That's what we originally, I believe, started with. And probably looking at another 75. It may not even be that much to finish the whole Sierra Track. But what we're seeing in certain areas, it is helping, it is improving. The water flow especially, obviously. And the quality, I'm sure. But, is there any real strong resistance as far, what I'm thinking is we don't have another board meeting for another 2 weeks. And we have these people up here now. And by next Wednesday, we're going to be done with the money, I believe, that we had set aside. So just kind of curious about if we kept these guys going on the other side of Sierra Track and then came to you at the next board meeting with an approval for the money. Am I way off base here? Is that something that we can even talk about, or? Well, we have the people up here, and so we're not going to be paying a year from now the mobilization, things like that, so we would be saving some money.
John has his spending limit that's close to within it, right?
Yeah, we talked this a little bit yesterday, it's ONMIO. Maybe we're looking at another 50 to 70, let's say $75,000. We talked a little bit about the budget. What are your thoughts on that?
Not excited because everything else is occurred in the water fund.
It's terrible.
But the budget that these expenditures are coming out of, it's a $700,000 line item, but it's obviously intended to do other things and purchase supplies throughout the year. So I guess just the best advice I could have is just ensure that the remaining amount of that 700,000 is used sparingly.
Yes, and that comes out of the water O&M budget there.
So this additional 75,000 would come out of an existing budget item?
Yes,
That's kind of my point. It's not another overrun, if you will.
So how do we miss on our estimate in terms of what it would take, time, cost?
We thought we'd be going more, longer per day, getting more done per day. But with the long runs that we have, we're doing 4,000 foot runs at one time.
So they're dirtier than you thought they were going to be?
Yes. Yes, it's one of those where you can anticipate everything, but when you get out in the field, we didn't anticipate things like that. We didn't anticipate, a 3,000 or 4,000 foot run taking 5 hours to do.
Yeah, we're basically able to do only 2 loops a day, whereas we were kind of hoping for 3 or 4. I think part of the lower velocities might be contributing to that, but it's just, how dirty the pipes are, it's just taking longer than expected.
Yeah.
I guess my only issue is, Paloma well is going to be way more expensive than we thought it was going to be, and then the Alcohol well came in, and that's, so we're burning through, or actually the contingency is over allocated. Julie was talking about using a $500,000 contingency, but all for Paloma well, and that didn't even cover all that. So I guess I can't answer your question because I don't know that we have the money, or just to me, it's most important to get those wells back in service and operating. Not that this isn't an important activity, but I just don't know that.
Absolutely, the wells are important.
So I would look to staff to provide a recommendation on that.
I guess the question is, the areas that have been treated, there's a noticeable improvement in the water pressure at people's faucets? Is that what's going on?
It's not so much going to give additional water pressure. It's really going to cut down on any future water complaints, because we've had multiple complaints in the Sierra Tract area. We expect with doing this that we're not going to get those same complaints in the future. It could help chlorine residuals, but we'll have to finish the flushing to really to be able to check that. The other thing that it will help is with flows in the area, because as we're taking this stuff out of the pipe, it gives you a little bit more diameter to work with. I would say that if we only did 1/2 of the Sierra Tract, we're probably not going to reap the full benefits of doing the whole tract.
So we were going to originally do both sides, but because it's taking longer, you can't. Yes, sir. And were you going to call back next year to do the other half? Is that where you were kind of?
That's one. Basically, yeah, there's 2 options. One is do this side of it and let them go, and then have them come back. But then again, like Adrian was saying, to get the full benefit throughout, everything's all connected.
Right.
You'd want to do the whole thing.
And
or the second. Pardon?
Yeah, the mobilization.
Kind of going with that, so. you come back to us next year and say, hey, we want these guys back.
Yeah,
We get them to come up here and
Yeah.
set up shop again and do that. Okay,
Yeah.
so would you get the same effect hypothetically here now? You just open hydrants, could you do the same thing? Would it clean it like it's doing with this? basically
No, because we have,
reverse osmosis?
most of them are 4-inch lines. You'll get a lot of stuff up what we've done over the years, but not
And wastewater.
yeah, and we're pumping it into the sewer because it's.
Yeah, that's why it's hypothetical.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just one of the aspects.
Hypothetically, yeah, you could.
So
You could do that.
we had looked at doing unidirectional flushing versus flushing with the no-dez trucks. The two reasons we weren't able to do that was, one, discharging to storm drain and getting what you're seeing in these filters going into like a trap creek or into a lake would be horrible environmentally. We wouldn't be able to do that, get permission to do that from Manhattan. The second thing we looked at was discharging to the sewer. Based on the flows that we're trying to achieve, our sewer system doesn't have the capacity to take that kind of flow.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, it wouldn't work.
Not as good as what we're doing now.
And if we didn't clean the other side of Sierra Track now, you've got clean pipes on one side, dirty pipes on the other side. Some of that, that sediment could move into our clean pipes. So we won't end up with the same final product if we split it into two different layers.
So, just a quick question, of the $750,000 line item, $75,000, what are kind of the other requests on that line item? As of right now, do we know?
That's the line item that the water department uses to purchase pipe, fittings, everything that we use in that department. Clamps for water leaks, curb stops, just about everything.
And the annual use of it does fluctuate a lot, just depending on what they have going on. I mean, there's years when it's been as low as 350, but then there's years when it hits its max at 700. So it does go up and down. That's why I'm saying if we're going to allocate more of the money to this flushing project, we just really need to watch the spending of the remaining amount of the budget throughout the year and the rest of the year.
And we do realize everything that's going on with the wells, and you're absolutely correct. The wells are very, very important. So that's why we kind of want to just bring it up now to kind of see where everybody was at, basically, because we know it's a lot of money. We're trying to do the best that we can with the money that we do have. But it does look like we're falling behind, but we started a job that we anticipated would be complete, but once we got out there and the pipes aren't as good as what we thought they were, I guess, or it's not going as quick as we thought it was going to go.
If it was your money, would you do it?
Yeah.
At this point, I would, just because we've had some water quality complaints of the rusty water, there's nowhere to get rid of it. The pipes are 50+ years old and they're steel. Yes, I would. I think I would take a
inclined to agree with you.
I would take a chance just because what we're seeing, the 50-year-old pipe, never been flushed accurately. Yes, I would. Because if you call them back next year, $75,000 to do that, half that's going to, I don't know what mobilization is, probably what did they have?
Off the top, call it 10 grand,
Yeah.
10, 15 grand.
They come from New Mexico.
Yeah. Then you're disinfecting the truck. I mean, there's a lot of startup there.
But if you were asking me to make the decision, I would make that decision, yes. I would take my chances and try to conserve on the rest of the other budget. Now, I can't guarantee that we can. Prices of things are up.
Right now.
Yeah, prices are up on everything. Things are hard to get.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But to be
Just
honest
my
with you, I
opinion.
would.
So do we kind of have a consensus that will just allow staff to make an educated decision for us?
Let's hear love for the spending discussion. Where you understand that's
Well, it's 75,000, but that's how this initial work was done already. So, I think we go back, we get some better numbers on what the order is going to be. We'll take a look at these other budget line items and make a decision. Looking ahead, I don't see that we have a lot of that budget line item that Paul referred to. A lot of that money can go for district installed water line, which at this point I don't see a lot out there. So I feel like we'll take it with what's left of the season and given everything else that we're doing right now. So I feel like there's room in that budget item. It's only August. But I think we have to do this work, so whether we do it And now it's most cost efficient. If you do the other half next year or the year after, we're going to spend more money to the same work. So
And maybe not have a good ending.
Correct.
Those are going backwards,
End result.
that's the water lines are cross-contaminated, the
Yeah.
other ones are,
yeah. So I think we keep going.
fresh.
So we'll just trust staff. Okay, John, you're up.
Okay, got some, sheds to work through here. Starting with staffing in underground repair sewer, with position and advertised there that ended in, on July 23rd. And we are now reviewing 17 applications, one of those is an internal application. And we have interviews planned for August 12th. Another position in plant operations, we are considering a position change, and this would convert an existing operator in training position in OIT to an operator one position. Now, this conversion is expected to have positive financial results now and throughout the life of this position, and also have other positive outcomes. I'll be reviewing and discussing this in detail with the AD-HOC Committee for Organizational Structure, Service, and Efficiency, Kelly and Chris, when we meet right after this board meeting. So I'll give them more detail. If it looks good to them, I'll bring it forward to the board at the next meeting. COVID update. We've seen, I would say, a significant recent uptick in cases locally, in town, and in the county. At the district, we now have 4 of our own staff are out with symptoms and generally awaiting test results. One of those 4 test results already came back as COVID positive. So one of those is with someone that's COVID positive right now, and they're at home. Now, this infection occurred outside of the workplace, outside of the district, and there was no exposure to the district staff. So this person was out, contracted COVID, and has not been back since. So I think fortunate there. The district, we're operating at our own internal risk level 2 as part of our risk, COVID risk management plan. This currently includes no mask requirement for vaccinated employees. And this is all in compliance with all current local and state requirements, including the governor's office, OSHA, CDPH, and the county health officer. And should that change, we will change. Any comments or questions on COVID at the district? Okay, Tamarack Fire, we talked about that. Tahoe Water Partnership. Mentioned this, I think, a couple months ago. I'm continuing to work with Tahoe City PD and North Tahoe PD, so they will join us on our federal lobbying efforts with EMS. And now both have agreed to partner with the district on this effort, which will result, I think, in 3 things, at least 3 things. And first of all, a stronger voice for Tahoe area water system funding at the federal level. And 2, reduce staff time at the district, as these other agencies will help us out with EMS on various lobbying related activities. And 3, reduce consultant costs to the district. Our bill to EMS will be reduced by about $10,000 per year every year, as the other 2 agencies will help pay the EMS bill in this joint effort. So I think that's been a great effort and a good partnership for the Tahoe area. Next, 2021 goals. You might remember these earlier this year. I worked with the board to develop a number of board goals for the general manager for 2021. About 60 goals over 12 strategic categories. I'm currently assessing the status of each one of these goals, and between now and the next board meeting, I'll be sending out my summary status assessment. And as we discussed back in February, I'll be assessing each of the 12 categories, not each of the 60-something goals individually. So just a heads up that I'll be sending something your way in the next week or so, and at the next board meeting, we can review and discuss them under GM reports as much as you like. And my last item is Tahoe Water. So I think Dave's going to step out just for a few minutes, and then we'll continue with closed session, we'll call you back in.
Over here, close by.
Okay, Tauke's water. I met and our staff met with Tauke's again last week, talking about potential long-term water supply alternatives and working on the details of the engineering RFP for those outside engineering services needed to assist in the development of these alternatives. Again, this work will be paid for by the Tauke's Property Owners Association by way of that reimbursement agreement that this board has already approved. And these items will be coming to the Tauke's board on August 18th. At the Tauke's, their primary water supply is well number 1, and I think the secondary source of water would then be the Lupin's intertie. And then their number 3 well would be available as kind of a lag water supply. So they are continuing work on the uranium treatment system to have wells number 2 and number 3, and they expect that they'll be completed and actually go online sometime later this month. And as I understand it, the Keys is now allowing some drip irrigation and hand watering, but still no turf irrigation. That landscape watering fill station at Lupin's, that remains in operation. In July, about 253,000 gallons were supplied. That's down from 330,000 gallons in June. At our intertie with Lupin's, the district provided 97,000 gallons in July. And with our intertie with Tauke's, we have not supplied any water to Tauke's. So that's really not the on Tauke's water today. And if there's no more questions,
Any questions?
comments, we can bring Dave back in.
I just, with the Tamarack fire, and just, I was curious in terms of how we're dealing with exercising the fire hydrants and making everything we can do to be prepared just in case, the river fire going on right now. Just checking on that.
Yeah, we actually have one person right now dedicated exclusively to going out and checking hydrants. And if there's any work needed, developing a work order on those. I think the last I heard, he was getting to about 20 per day. And that's just one position. And then I think as time permits, we'll have other crew members from around Pearl Water assist on that effort. I don't know if we have a total number of hydrants that have been checked recently.
I don't have the total, I was
Bring that.
weekly.
Yeah, maybe.
Find out, bring that back next time. But, all hands on deck on that.
Don't want to have a situation arise where we go to turn the hydrant on and there's no water there.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
like to do that. Okay. So you see the future and past meetings, and now we will go in closed session. Does anybody want to take a quick break or just go straight? No? Okay, we are coming out of closed session into open session with nothing to report, and this meeting is adjourned.